we're going to jump over to our field notes section, kind of circling all the way back around, talking about branding, right? We kind of kicked off the show with a little bit of a brand shift. This is, I would say, a really positive brand shift that you were able to talk and have a conversation with John Gibson over at Secret Creek, somebody I had the pleasure of meeting back. I think the first time I met John was 2022 at the glamping show. Live in person. We had a chance to talk with John and Garrett, and I did a little interview with them. I think that was first or second year of the glamping show out in Colorado. Really great guy. They've got a really cool product. But Matt, you had another conversation with John, and I learned something new from this conversation. Really hearing from his roots and how Secret Creek kind of came to be. So, do you just want to tell everybody about the conversation you had with John and give some commentary on him, his company, the rebrand?
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. My first contact with John Gibson was actually off of a LinkedIn post. I had heard about him and heard a lot of great things about Secret Creek. I think you and I had even discussed it, but heard from other industry professionals that, really stand-up guy, really stand-up operation, and finally got the chance to connect with him. But it's funny, I had a post a while back that got a little bit of engagement about my own challenges with a glamping manufacturer. And, I wasn't sure if I wanted to post that. And for that exact reason, I was like, I'm going to want to do business with manufacturers in the future. And I don't want to be labeled as the guy that puts manufacturers on blast in public. And so he had a very thoughtful post or comment on my post about, feeling for the manufacturer side, because manufacturing is really difficult. And I totally get that. And so I think, he may have started off being a little skeptical of my outlook on things, and hopefully not anymore after a nice chat. But got to meet with him and hear the story of how he came about purchasing the Colorado Yurt Company and rebranding it, and it was just such a refreshing conversation about branding, but authenticity, and kind of an authenticity problem that our industry has in some corners, and I think it's apparent that we have that, and it's a lot of low barrier to entry relatively to become a glamping manufacturer, and there's a lot of new players in the space that are promising things that they can't deliver, and it was just refreshing to hear from somebody on that side of the industry that has been at it for a while and really has the right outlook, and it's just authentic to who he is, right? His backcountry trips and everything, and I just loved the anecdote about him bringing his pack mule Margie to one of the prior glamping shows.
That was that show in 2022 that Margie was there, and it was really cool. Like it was,
yeah.
And to your point, like you could feel how like the booth was different, right? And
Yeah.
in a setting like that, for anybody who hasn't visited the glamping show, everybody, and every manufacturer possible has their unit up. You're trying to sell on quality, on brand. These are ultimately people that you would be in a partnership and a relationship with should you purchase this unit. And John was one of those. And to your point, Matt, it sticks out to me for that reason. I mean, hey, I remembered the date that I met you. Like it's got to be at least somewhat of a special occurrence. It was one of the most authentic booths that was there. You could feel John and just
Right.
him come out through that. And I think the best brands that are doing things well in our space either are, one, obviously solving a problem, but there's this personal component and this personal thing that ties back to something greater, right? John had this line that you quoted, Matt, in the article of he would always tell people he's going to Secret Creek behind Secret Ridge near Secret Mountain, right? And everybody's got that own experience. We all likely have that story if you're a camper or an RVer of that trip that you took to that really cool place. And I think that's what makes, the rebrand so special. He was still able to kind of keep the Colorado Yurt name, but obviously since then they've expanded to add, Earthworks teepees, destination tents. They've kind of grown the product catalog. And I think Secret Creek is it's a really authentic, cool name. great icon and logo, obviously capturing Margie in the icon itself. I mean, it's one of the most kind of cool rebrands and brands that I've seen in a long time.
Right. And I came across the brand just in conversations before really ever knowing anything about John, and the Mule struck me as it's such a like interesting like juxtaposition as to what we see in the industry. And I talked about that with John about how a lot of people have kind of generic mountains and creeks and landscapes and stuff, but right, like there's nothing sexy about a mule. And that might offend some people, like, who are really like hardcore, backcountry trip takers. But like a mule is a symbol of hard work and grit and just like getting the job done and with no frills, and that, right. I just think it was a brilliant way to rebrand, and it's different and it separates, but it's also true to like what they are, right? Like yurts have been around for a long time. There's nothing like revolutionary about a yurt or a teepee or like a safari tent, but and I think that right we have all these new sexy modern things, and I think I've kind of got suckered into it a little bit in my own project, and now I'm regretting it. And I should have just gone with the tried and true classic, yurt company that's been around for decades. Probably would be in a better spot today. So it's food for thought, and it was a really like thought provoking conversation, and felt like it needed to be shared. So glad we had the opportunity to talk about it.